Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We are at poem 303, The Soul Selects Her Own Society. This is a very important poem in room 303. It just so happens that shut the door ends up being one of the lines of this poem. I want to pause for a moment and I want to dedicate this set of comments to a true supporter and great friend of our series Chats with Emily, the American poet Denise Fletcher. She has received some news regarding health issues, and I just want her to know that our prayers are with her, and I just want to say thank you to her for the tremendous support that she has given us through the process of these series of talks. And I know that she will be pleased that this is the lecture and this is the poem that we will be using to remember her as well as we say thank you to her. Now, when this poem was published in 1890, it was actually titled Exclusion. And that's interesting because this is going to be a poem about shutting the door, about selecting and shutting the door. And of course, given that Emily is well, some have called her a recluse. We don't really like that term. She just makes the decision to select her own society and shut the door. This will be an important poem for us. There's so many different ways to kind of come at this poem, and certainly scholars have. The great scholar David Priest has said that even Emily's emperor, Samuel Boyles, did not always gain admission to her presence. On one such occasion, he shouted in expiration up the stairs, quote, "Emily, you damned rascal, no more of this nonsense. I've traveled all the way from Springfield to see you. Come down at once," letter 515 note. And I find this poem a fascinating poetic attempt to try to explain to any number of folks, including possibly Emily herself, why she made the choice that she made to shut the door. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. And I'm hopeful that you have already worked through our set of introductory comments, and I'm hopeful that you've worked through our preceding 302 earlier poems. We just finished with 302, like some old-fashioned miracle. Now, the central question, it seems, of this poem is, who or what does the soul actually select? That's going to be standing behind a lot of our interpretation. Some see this poem as another definition poem, right? That is to say, what the soul is not, but rather what the soul does, okay? And the soul both, notice in this poem, will select, but it's also going to exclude. And of course, in the process of selecting, you usually do exclude. Some theorists of this poem have recognized it as a form of self-analysis, to use maybe Freudian or psychoanalytic language. Some have qualified this as hubris nicely delineated. One scholar called this poem that. Another calls it Emily, quote, as cool Puritan, making her decisions. Now, there is some argument that maybe her understanding of the soul is related to her study of sermons by Jonathan Edwards. And of course, we're familiar with Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net on that ditty. Let's enjoy the poem. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door. To her divine majority present no more. Unmoved, she notes the chariots pausing at her low gate. Unmoved, an emperor be kneeling upon her mat. I've known her from an ample nation choose one, then close the valves of her attention like stone. Now, it's interesting that we begin with soul and we end with stone, and there's been a whole lot of debate about how to actually interpret this poem. Guys, the reason we call our series Chats with Emily is that we're only speculating at what she herself might say, and as we've said in a number of previous lectures as we've worked through the previous poems, there's any number of times when you read and study the poetry of Emily Dickinson that you would long to just sit on the other side of the door that was closed or half open, or sit at the bottom of the stairs, and she sat at the top of the stairs, where she would entertain people only that way and not even let them often see her. Or, as in the case of Sam Boyles in the letter that was referenced earlier, she wouldn't even admit people into her company. Now, Now, there's always been a question as to why, and you've noticed that we've not given any definitive answer, because there's any number of possible answers, from rejected love to some kind of traumatic experience to the possibility of epilepsy. I mean, there's any number of things that scholars have pointed out. In the end, I don't know that it really matters, because what Emily chooses, I think, is what we're reading. That is to say, her poetic venture ultimately is her choice. And the way she says it is, the soul selects her own society. By the way, when we get to poem 664, we'll come back to this study, and this is the way that poem reads. Of all the souls that stand create, I have elected one. When sense from spirit flies away, and subterfuge is done, when that which is and that which was apart intrinsic stand, and this brief drama in the flash is shifted like a sand, when figures show their royal front and mists are carved away, behold the atom I preferred to all the lists of clay. It isn't clear who this society is that she selects, but notice the soul here is treated as feminine. And of course, in the language of wisdom literature, Sophie is always going to be feminine, and here it will be feminine. The soul selects her own society, in other words, makes a choice, then shuts the door. And again, when this poem was published in 1890, it was actually called Exclusion, although some have speculated that it could have easily have not been called Exclusion, but rather Selection, because not only does she exclude, but she selects, right? Selects something, whatever that is. To her divine majority, present no more. Now, majority will get used again when we come to poem 435. Much madness is divine sense to the discerning eye. 'Tis the majority as all prevails. Sometimes the word majority here for Emily is going to be used in some kind of pejorative way, as in negative. But notice here it's her divine majority present no more. In other words, a process of selection and deselection, right? Making decisions. You'll remember in our study of Plato's Republic that Plato argues that education is, in fact, a process of selection and deselection. And here, she says in 4 lines, the soul selects, makes the decision, shuts the door, and then it's definitive, it's over, it's done. Then unmoved twice. In other words, once the decision is made, there is no undoing it, she says. Unmoved, she notes the chariots, pausing. By the way, someone pointed out that if she is referencing Sue, her pal here, she is in her room writing, and she can look right out the window down to see the, of course, carriages or whatever. Notice the royal language here. Unmoved, she notes the chariots pausing at her low gate. Some have read into this low gate some kind of sexual reading. I'll leave that one to you guys to think about. Unmoved, an emperor be kneeling upon her mat. In other words, once she's made her decision, once the soul has made her decision, selected her society, whatever it is she's going to attend to, attention will be one of the last words of this poem. She doesn't engage in second guessing the decision. It's done. And then Emily injects herself into this poem. I've known her. Okay? I've known her. That is to say, the soul that selects, I've known her from an ample nation, from all of the options available. Choose one. Now, notice capitalize C, capitalize O in the Johnson edition, and there's been a huge debate about who is this one? What is this one? Many have read it as a person, some have read it as an ideal, or maybe even the poetic muse itself. In other words, I've made my decision. I will select, I will shut the door, and I will give my life to the poetic venture that thankfully she obviously gave her life to for our sake. We're grateful for it. Then, after choosing, notice we go from selecting to choosing. Then close the valves of her attention. It's interesting that we go from door to valves. Much has been made of this. You'll remember in poem 131, it was the spicy valves, the valves of the heart. Some have seen it as that. In other words, I had to make a decision, and then after that, shut down my heart. And she doesn't use the word heart. It's not the valves of heart. It's the valves of attention, perception, attention, right? And then, like stone. In other words, close the door like stone. Now, this like stone, possible, any number of possible religious references here. Zechariah 7:12 has been referenced by several theologians. You'll remember that passage out of the King James Version, 16:11. Yea, they make their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should hear the law. This idea of closing the stone is, of course, the stone that covers the grave of Christ that has to be removed and all of that. The final stone, if you will. It isn't clear, obviously, who it is that she has chosen as the one. Some have referenced it's Christ. Some have referenced a lover or a friend. And then, of course, as we said, some have referenced it as her decision to be a poet and to make that poetic goal, her exclusive goal, if you will. At 2A, what are we going to do for themes messages with a poem like this? Well, however you interpret this poem, and again, I'm just giving you information. I'm hopeful that you will interpret it the way you will want to interpret it. But I think one of the things clearly is that she's arguing is that the goal is focused attention for the creative genius, for the artist. She will say in poem 772, all is the price of all. It's a great line. And of course, artists understand that what she's saying here is you've got to make a choice. You have to attend. You have to give your attention to something and then shut the door. For her, it means, I think, I had to become really focused on this work. At 2B, well, the language here, especially of the soul is feminine, makes us think of Sophie and wisdom, and in our dedication to the poet Denise Fletcher, who is very much, her poetry is often directed towards this very notion. At 3A, and the ways in which we can try and find our way here, well, I think there's just a lot of writers that come to mind immediately that would challenge us to think about our focus. I want to stick with Emily, though. When we get to poem 674, we'll be playing a similar kind of game. The soul that hath a guest doth seldom grow abroad. Diviner crowd at home, obliterate the need. And courtesy forbid a host's departure when upon himself be visiting the emperor of men. Now, I think that when we get to poem 745, we'll also play around with this same idea, and I think it will be for us useful. Renunciation is a piercing virtue, the letting go a presence for an expectation, not now. The putting out of eyes, just sunrise, lest day's great progenitor. Out thy renunciation is the choosing against itself to justify unto itself, when larger function make that appear, smaller that covered vision here. But I want to come back to the shut the door thing, because we will have already seen that very phrase in 220, in 248, but we're going to see it again in 840 and in 850. But when we get to poem 1523, we're going to hear it this way. We never know we go when we are going. We jest and shut the door. Fate, following, behind us bolts it, and we accost no more. No more to stone. Finally, I think that at 3A we can make observations about Dante. I think Dante stands behind a poem like this. The goal, of course, for Dante the Pilgrim is to what? To make the choice. Where will I devote my attention? Remember, we've given full lectures, of course, at the Divine Commedia at learnstrong.net. You can run those lectures to ground. But you'll remember at the very beginning that he says, I don't know how it happened, but somewhere I lost, in the middle time of my life, I lost my way, and I didn't know where my attention was. And you'll remember that finally, in Canto 24 of Inferno, he's had enough. He sits down and he tells Virgil what? I can't do it anymore. And what is it that Virgil says? Oh, no. Up on your feet. This is no time to tire. The man who lies asleep will never wake in fame, and his desire will drift past him like ripples on a stream. And I think there's very much a part of this going on in this poem as well. Finally, in 3B, how do you own a set of lines like this? What was a time when you had to choose? You had to shut the door, and that was it. And there was no emperor, there was no chariot, there was nothing that was going to dissuade you from your choice. It's possible that by the time you hit poem 303, in room 303, you've decided you're going to read all 1,775 Emily poems. I hope so. Thank you.